The British press has always claimed fair and balanced reporting, but it could be argued that the press in Britain is anything but fair. A stolen, outdated membership list of the British National Party was recently published on the internet, causing a press and media frenzy. In an enlightened society, social principles say that all communities should be treated equally, but not apparently when it comes to the British National Party. Newspapers delighted in headlines such as these, which portrayed the party in the worst possible light. Articles were calculated to present a totally one-sided and false view, sensationalism that pretended they were exposing a sinister secret society. Yet they were forced to admit that doctors, lawyers and professional people were among those listed, somewhat different to the commonly accepted view of nationalists as flag-waving skinheads, like this typical photograph in the Daily Mirror. The media also had to grudgingly concede that the wholesale disclosure of any organization's details constitutes a serious breach of the Data Protection Act. Despite this, they couldn't contain their delight. The media gleefully disclosed that the personal details of over 12,000 members were freely available on the internet to anyone across the world. This apparent ambivalence is typical of the British media. Their duty to report fairly is always compromised by their eagerness to sell more papers or programs. But why did they abandon their high principles and denigrate the British National Party? The answer is they're just following orders. The National Union of Journalists guidelines indicate that journalists must speak disapprovingly of what they perceive to be racist organisations. In their judgment, and it is only their judgment, the BNP is seen as a racist group and therefore must be denigrated. So there you have it, fair and balanced reporting. Following this exposure of the leaked list, party members were subjected to intimidating internet hoax calls and emails, all aided and abetted by the British media. One particularly vile piece of gutter journalism was by Brian Reed in the Daily Mirror, who wrote, "I pray the BNP's details don't fall into the hands of black radical groups. It would be awful if anything nasty happened to these nice people." There is clearly a racist suggestion here that black groups would necessarily be violent, and Reed also appears to be insinuating that members of the British National Party should be physically attacked. But then, this is the Daily Mirror. Early in 2008, this newspaper published faked photographs supposedly showing British soldiers abusing Iraqis. The then editor, Piers Morgan, was summarily dismissed. This crass act of wanton media stupidity damaged diplomatic relations and put British servicemen's lives at risk. Even after a grovelling apology, the Mirror's circulation plummeted and has remained at an all-time low. And even in the respectable Daily Mail, Stephen Glover says, "Nor should we give succour to the BNP by treating its followers as pariahs who do not deserve legal rights." Then one paragraph later, he completely contradicts himself by describing BNP members as nutcases and thugs. Many party members received threatening and intimidating emails and phone calls, mostly out of mischief, but all very worrying for their families and friends. Certain types of internet users, known as web crawlers, delight in trying to frighten people while hiding behind obscure email addresses themselves. Psychologically, this behavior is well documented. They would never dare confront anyone openly. If you received emails from any of these, you are not alone, and you are entitled to register this with your local police. These hoaxes were quickly stopped once the perpetrators realized their email addresses can be traced.
Do you have a wife and children? Do you have any children? What do they think? You're a member of the BNP, aren't you?
Similarly, hoax callers were made aware by party publicity that even withheld numbers can still be traced by police. Party chairman Nick Griffin's legal team have mounted a vigorous campaign to highlight media duplicity and the resultant deliberate persecution of party members. He has forced the media to admit they have acted on information obtained from an illegally procured document and have therefore breached the Data Protection Act themselves. This has consequently silenced or seriously restricted their output. Several papers have even contacted the party to advise of no further usage. Together with Solidarity Union paralegals, Mr. Griffin intends to pursue identified individuals with tangible assets to deter any possible repetition of the despicable persecution of British National Party members. Any members still experiencing problems at work should contact Solidarity on the party website. Headlines such as these in the Daily Mail have echoed what the British National Party has indicated for some time, that the government have been utilising the police as a political tool. The arrest and detention of 13 activists in Liverpool for distributing the perfectly legal Racism Cuts Both Ways pamphlet suggests political motivation. Some commentators have referred to elements within our present government as the Red Brigade. At least one newspaper columnist pointed out the irony of the government's own closet revelations. New Labour's very own leaked list. Jack Straw, Justice Minister and a former communist. As Foreign Secretary, he toured the world apologising for the British Empire in a false display of fawning appeasement. Peter Hain, former communist, born in South Africa, he was kicked out for fomenting terrorism. Convicted of criminal conspiracy in the 1970s, formed the Anti-Nazi League, which eventually dissolved. Forced to resign from cabinet for financial improprieties. David Blunkett, former communist, when leader of Sheffield City Council, it was known as the Socialist Republic of South Yorkshire. Forced to resign as Home Secretary after admitting preferential fast-tracking of visa applications and a scandal in his personal affairs. Charles Clark, former communist, campaigned for Fidel Castro's Cuban regime in the 1970s, supporter of the government's 42 days detention without charge proposal, forced to stand down as Home Secretary when his department was declared unfit for purpose. John Reid, former communist, a hard-knuckled bully boy and a favourite of Tony Blair. As Home Secretary, he jumped before he was pushed when further revelations of Home Office incompetence were exposed in the media. Harriet Harman publicly stated that Fidel Castro was a hero of the left. Castro was the brutal dictator of a totalitarian regime that outlawed all political organising he disapproved of. Criticised even by ethnic groups for her Equality Bill, which legalises discrimination against white British males. Margaret Hodge, former Children's Minister and leader of loony left Islington Council, had a bust of Lenin installed in the town hall despite public opposition. As Culture Minister, she was notorious for stating that the proms were too white. It is a given that communism tolerates no opposition, and now the media are suggesting that New Labour have indeed influenced chief police officers to act on government instructions. The dual attitude of the media is now untenable. They know the BNP is a properly constituted political party with many commendable aspects. It has the support of many public figures and professionals, and the media are aware of this. Their attacks and slander have begun to mellow, but how much longer before the press and TV finally live up to their claims of fair and balanced reporting?